Hey everyone, we're back. I'm here with Paul yet again, and this week we wanted to discuss screen memories, which is a really important topic because it definitely, the whole phenomenon of how aliens and alien civilizations interact with humans, it gets very, very confusing, and in part because of their ability to manipulate memories, and that creates a lot of issues, for people as they're trying to figure out and understand what's happening. And there's a lot of reasons for it. So maybe Paul can walk us through. He's got
Yeah,
a lot of experience with it, and personal experience with what that feels like. So why
absolutely.
don't you just take it away? Let us know, kind of what are screen memories, and why do the aliens use them?
Just before we get into that, I just want to say that we've reactivated our website, the zetaconnection.com. It's got no dashes in it or anything. A lot of the books, a lot of the papers that were written, they're all on that site. If anybody wants to download any of the PDFs or whatever, that's the place to go, the zetaconnection.com. Screen memories are used by beings to do certain things, and the Zetas aren't the only ones that use screen memories. A lot of beings use screen memories, a lot of races. And what I've found out through different uh, methods with working with the Zetas and even bringing up my own conscious recall of contact is that there's multiple types of screen memories. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. I've got them up on my screen here. So there's a type A screen memory, and it's used by races to completely obliterate any memory of contact. So if you were taken while driving your car down the road or something like that, you'd probably think that was called missing time, right? That is, there's no capacity generally for a person who's got a type A screen memory to remember that they've actually been taken. All right. Um, these screen memories are used because imagine if I'll give you a scenario. You've been driving down the road. Your car's gone with you, and you've gone up somewhere, and something's happened to you, and you come back and you fully remember what goes on. Right at that moment, there's a complete disconnect between your reality and what's just happened, and you wouldn't be able to function. There'd be no capacity for a person to function. If they were used to it happening, then yeah, of course, they'd be able to function. But you'll see as we go along, there are other types of memories as well. So that was just called a type A screen memory. And those ones, people generally don't get to, ever have them removed or even bring them up in hypnotherapy or anything like that.
And so one quick question. All these different types of screen memories, like this type A, it's entirely up to the race that does this as to what kind of screen memory they're going to give you. It has nothing to do with you or what you're doing, and there's really not much you can do about it. They're going to decide what kind of screen memory they give you or not, and it's entirely up to them, and they have their reasons. And there's really very little you can do about it, right?
Yeah. So basically, they may even get to the point where they don't bother giving a person screen memories anymore because you've had so much contact and it's bled through, and you'll see that when we get to other screen memories, that that in the end it's just not worth it because there's no more effect on you psychologically for having the contact. Whereas in the beginning, and I know this is true for myself, I had a lot of screen memories given to me because I, I I got to the point where subconsciously I never ever wanted to speak about extraterrestrials ever. I knew in my mind that I just didn't want to talk about it. If anyone even tried to talk to me about it, I just would walk away, and I didn't know why. Okay, but of course now I know why. But we'll keep going. So the next one's a type B screen memory, and these screen memories are a narrative. And when a human is taken on board a craft, we have found that they are generally a hybrid human. And this means that they're part ET and part spirit. And this blending of consciousness makes up the full potential of the hybrid. When on board a craft, the mind of the hybrid human needs to be kept busy so that function required of the ET consciousness can be achieved. And so often, the human mind will be given a narrative and a story. The narrative could be that they're being taught to control the craft, or they're actually holding a human, or a child, right? A baby. This narrative will seem real in every sense, and the human mind cannot perceive the difference of the screen memory versus its real life. The difference with the screen memories that are B type screen memories, they're not time limited, and so often they remain with the hybrid completely through their life. Okay, so a lot of people will say, "Yeah, this happened to me, and I was, driving a craft and all the rest of it." And look, let's be honest, it would be fun to be able to drive craft, okay? But whether a human actually has the capacity to actually fly a craft or drive a craft, whatever you want to say, it would require, like a lot of telepathic input into the craft. The craft would have to be interrelating to the person telepathically as well. I would suggest that if a person was flying a craft, that there would be other extraterrestrials or beings working with the person, and you probably would just be. It's like when your dad's teaching you to drive, and he's holding the steering wheel, and you're a kid, and that's the sort of thing would take
Yeah,
place.
or like kids in a shopping cart where you get the shopping carts with the little steering wheel on the front, and then you push the kid
Yeah,
around and the kid's in there driving.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's funny. That I see that all the time. The next screen memories, these are called Type C, and these memories are created to support your local mind of the hybrid, and the screen memory is also time limited. These are interesting screen memories because you won't remember anything, and then all of a sudden you reach a certain age, and then suddenly you remember something that happened years ago. It's like there's some sort of timer associated with it. Um, these screen memories, unfortunately, are notoriously unreliable and can drop at any time. And sometimes they can be bypassed using different techniques. So you could use some hypnotherapy process or deep meditative processes to actually bring the screen memory down. And they're highly unreliable because that's what they're meant to be. They're just there as a band-aid until the band-aid gets ripped off. The problem about forcing the removal of a screen memory is that if you actually force it to take place, then the capacity of the person to stay grounded disappears. And very slowly, over a couple of days, the person becomes totally ungrounded as they're trying to resolve what is just being downloaded into their mind, because the screen memory's dropped. So
Would one of these time limited screen memories, would that typically be a narrative as well? Or when you reach that time limit, are you remembering the real event probably? Or what are
it's
you
actually a
remembering?
real event. This is a real event. So I'll give you an example. When I was in the block of units or flats, and the tic tac came and just sat there, and myself, my friend, and some other friends were all standing there watching the extraterrestrials, the Zetas, looking at us. They're only like 5 to 8 meters away in this tic tac, broad daylight, just sitting there staring at us. And they're about 3 stories up. I actually didn't remember that, and neither did anybody else that was with me. When the craft disappeared, we all just synchronously turned together and walked inside the lounge room and sat down on the couch and just started watching TV. Not one of us spoke about that craft sighting at all, right? Then all of a sudden one day, probably 20 years later, I was just sitting there, and the timer went off and the screen memory hit, and I went, "Oh my God, I remember what happened now." And I had no prior memory of that.
And the others, the other guys that were with you, do they have the same time limit thing?
They would have all had it, but unfortunately, one of them passed, and I haven't had contact with the others. Yeah. So yeah, that's type C are really super common, really common, probably the most common one so far.
You definitely hear about that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I will quickly talk about type D, but type D, it's basically really super specific to the Zeta race as well. So the hybrid is trained by the race, and the hybrid can, in some way, create their own small SQEs, synthetic quantum environments. And in doing so, the memory of an encounter can be overlaid to the host recipient, right? Basically, there's about 153 concurrent SQEs that are functional around the planet, and they're used to perform various functions, and they're known often by other humans as jump rooms. Okay, so people will jump into these jump rooms thinking that they're moving through to Mars or jumping to such and such. They're
Yeah,
actually
like the
jumping.
Basiago
y-
case.
Yeah, that's Iago, right? And so uh, the SQEs are a technology, and they're controlled by consciousness, and they can be used to create an environment that is a mirror image of a physical environment. So if you think about something like a holodeck on Star Trek, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, but
So you kind of are you creating your own narrative essentially? Is that kind of what's happening?
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can also create a consensus narrative as well. And if this is such an interesting subject, because if the actual person uh, is with somebody else, you can be both placed into an SQE and not know that you're actually inside one of these, but you think you're actually on planet with somebody. So you might be believing that you're actually speaking to mantis beings, but you're actually inside this holographic environment with your friend or with another human, and you
Hmm.
both think that you're on planet.
So why do they use this? Like, what's the purpose? Do they just want to see what you create, or why would they give you this? Put you in one of these environments?
They put you in there because they want to see how you're going to react. Everything with the extraterrestrials is a test. There's it's like it's a science project. Yeah, they're not from the Zeta's perspective. Everything is technical. They're examining what's going on. They're trying to gain as much possible information. Um, Other races probably not so much. That I mean, I can only go from my own experiences with the Palladians and the Arcturians, and that they're not so much putting screen memories on people. That generally, if you're going to have a contact with an Arcturian or a Palladian, it's in consciousness, and you'll remember it. That's the other thing. Um, I would also suggest that there's a level of uh, how can I say this? A level of so your mind sits inside a construct, right? And I say this all the time, and this construct is an etheric construct. And when you have a contact, etheric construct expands. And the problem is, if they don't give you the screen memory, you can't reground. You've actually got to grow into the new size of the construct, right? So with the other races, they generally give you the conscious recall of the contact so that you slowly expand your construct. But with some other races, even the Zetas, specifically the technical race, and there are many other races, but with the technical race, if they do an expansion on your etheric body, you're going to have to grow into that, and it could take months, and that's going to be a very unsettling period for a person. That's if they don't use a screen memory. All right.
One question. So going back, I think it was the Type B. The narrative. I've heard the craft flying a craft narrative. That one's really common, but the holding a baby narrative is also very common. So that's a very interesting narrative to give to someone. And then also, I mean, there's a lot of talk now about hybrid breeding programs and things like that. And
Mhm.
we know that the abductor race are doing things. Would that narrative? Would that just would a positive race ever use that narrative, or is that something that would be probably negative contact? Or why give that narrative of a person holding a baby?
Okay, this is a little bit complicated, but everybody hang in there with me, right? So when some people go on craft, they're handed a box, and it's called the alien box phenomenon, right? And uh, what happens is construct, your mind is placed into the box. You're standing there still with the box in your hand, and you're experiencing whatever's recorded in the box. And the inside the box could be that you're flying a craft, or you're holding a baby, or whatever. And so that's, you're just standing there. There's actually nothing going on around you. But your hybrid component is actually over the other side somewhere talking to your race. Right. So there are times though where some of the craft have these places. Simon and I have been on craft where it's cylindrical, it's glass, or not, probably not glass, probably a bit dangerous, but and there's all people in them, and in the middle is a like a console, and there's some nurses, but the problem is with the nurses, you'll see them phase in and out. They're actually not nurses at all. So there are craft that do have those type of scenarios on them with children. I was a child on craft. Cyan was a child on craft. A lot of people have been on craft as well as adults. Or there could be that it's the alien box phenomenon. And the difference is you can never tell. You can never tell whether there's 10 people all standing there holding a box each, or whether it's actually all just happening. But a common way for people to know is their dream states. If you dream of rectangular rooms and there's either nothing in the room, or you're in the room and suddenly it's like you're sitting inside an office space with multiple sectioned offices or hospital beds or something like that. Generally, for myself, I've found that when I speak to people, that they talk about, oh, well, I was in this rectangular room, and for me, that's the first sign for me that they're actually having some level of contact.
Hmm. And so, I mean, what's interesting is they could just give you the, totally wipe out your memory every single time. But if they start to give you a narrative, it's sort of like they're easing you into the concept of contact. They want you to start remembering it, but nice and easy. So they give you, okay, you're on a craft. It's kind of fun. It's not too, not too threatening, because it could just give you a narrative of you're on a beach. Why put you in a craft? And just do, they could do anything with the SQEs. I mean, you could be anywhere, but they want to start introducing you to the concept of alien contact, essentially, right? But in an easy, kind of controlled way. That's the general idea.
Absolutely, and it's like the frog in the pot. Turn the flame up and the water heats up and all the rest of it. But um, I think it's a good way to do it, because if it's like the current level of disclosure, the drip feed that we've got, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
the intravenous drip feed. It's really slow, and as someone said yesterday, they never knew that disclosure could be boring. Yeah, that it's coming out so slow that people are like, just give me something that's gonna,
yeah,
like make me, feel like it's gonna be really good. And so it's the same with the screen memories. They do it in a way where ultimately, when you don't need the screen memories anymore, you've already got to the point where you actually just are okay with it.
yeah, yeah.
And people are going to see that with all this disclosure stuff as the real information starts coming out. And I've heard
Mm,
Elizondo say stuff about NASA and all the rest of it. You're going to start to really get this ontological shock in regards to what's going to happen. But we're sort of, because we've been doing this with the Zetas for so many years, we're past that. We're past the whole disclosure
mhm.
thing. We don't. It's disclosure for us is irrelevant. It's what you do when you have relationship with a race that means something,
Mhm, mhm,
because that's where everybody's heading, aren't they?
mhm.
But we're all heading at some point towards relationship and understanding that we're not alone in the universe. That there are other races, and that we are going to have to face the fact that we are going to be in a relationship with some races as well.
That's a good point. I mean, I guess as disclosure moves forward, you think that's probably going to trigger a lot more screen memories to start dropping. Like a lot of people that are having contact that maybe not haven't either haven't realized it or are in some form of denial.
Yeah,
They're not going to be in denial for much longer.
yeah, that's right. I really do feel for, in all of this, I feel really sorry for the people that have been taken, um, and have basically been treated quite poorly. in regards to, being taken, and some people have lost their jobs, some people have lost their families. They've spent their whole life searching for
Hmm.
some meaning of what's going on. And to me, it's just, uh, I think the people that have been taken are the ones that are going to be hit the hardest by the disclosure, because there's nowhere to hide anymore.
Yeah, and this is a really good point because really there's like two types of contact. There is the benevolent positive contact, which for most people, as the Zeta have said, the Zetas are checking in, or the races are checking in on their own. So for most people, if you're having a lot of contact and it's eventually you come to understand, accept it, and it's you can see that it's positive. That's probably because you're a hybrid, and it's essentially that's your race, and that's what they're doing. They're coming in to check on you, and so it really is a positive thing, and they're just trying to not destabilize you. But then there is the other contact, which are some of the negative races out there, and that is a whole different can of worms.
Yeah. So this leads us into the type E construct. Now, these type E constructs, they're a little bit difficult to understand, these types, and they're not specifically as screen memory, but this type of process is what's called a rotational experience, and it's based around certain energetic environments and triggers. The construct is a training ground for the individual hybrid, and is also an observation process for a race. So the race will be observing your reaction to what takes place. Rotational means that a human will be subjected to the same construct over and over until they resolve the test or issue, right? And the ET races constantly use this method to learn about humans. Now, as an example, there'll be certain actors inserted or placed around you. They can be humans or extraterrestrials or interdimensionals. It can be anything. And these actors will always play the same part, and they will trigger a response in you. The race that's training you will watch your response and see how you react. And if you do not learn from the failure, which means the inability to actually understand that you're in a construct, you'll be placed back into the construct to face the same test again. Okay.
There's a really good in the Robert Monroe books. I think it was in his last book, the third one. I forget what it's called, but he talks a lot about it when he's going out of body. He meets this. He calls them the inspecs, like intelligent species. He just doesn't know what they are. It's some sort of other race, and they keep doing this to him, putting him in the same
Mhm.
situation, and it's like emotionally charged stuff. Like I think one was
Always,
he's
yeah.
walking along a path and he's got his little dog, and another dog comes and kills his dog. And so the first time he attacks the other dog. Okay, and then no, that's a fail, and he does it again. He has to keep doing it until he basically reacts properly, which I think in that case was he accepts the death of his dog and he doesn't blame the other dog. It's like okay, this is part of the net, or something like that. But it's basically he does it over and over and over and over. And he talks about that as a. It's interesting.
So yeah, they're called rotational constructs or experiences, and they can be interlaced with missing time as well. So you, the whole point of extraterrestrials, and this could be a bit confusing to understand, but they are trying to work out how you think, because if they're going to um, talk to you and build relationship with you, then you as an individual have a specific way of thinking and acting, okay, and how you emotionally handle things. Now, if because we know that they apply a lens or an amplification process to everything that they do, if you're a calm person and I'm an extraterrestrial and I'm working with you, I, of course, will be able to interact with you telepathically. This is really critical, because anything that you're thinking telepathically comes to me. And telepathically, I'm sending you peace and silence and all the rest. But if you're not trained, you're going to send me all of your discarnate problems and issues and all the rest of it. And so what they do is they put people into these constructs to see how they'll react, so that when they actually have the person has contact on some level, they already know how you're going to react, because you've in some way resolved the construct. And
mhm.
people are talking about that we're living in a simulation. Well, they're pretty close to the truth in regards to that, but they've missed the fact that they're actually part of a construct.
And this whole process can take a really long period of time, just in general, because you as a person are developing slowly. Like I think the Zeta mentioned once that generally, many people have a lot of contact as children. Like if you're going to be contacted and then maybe nothing for a very long period of time. And then maybe once you're maybe in your 40s, maybe it starts to
Mhm.
happen again. And some of that's because they're letting the body mature as well. Like, like you have
Yeah.
to, they know what can destabilize you or how much, different things can destabilize you. And they're waiting for you to even just physically develop. But then also with what you're describing, it's a slow process for you to mentally come to grips with this. So they're going to take it, pretty slowly over a long period of time.
Yeah. When they first started to integrate themselves into the global population 80 years ago, basically they would take core samples from people, and most people would get them taken from their lower part of their leg. They did that because they were looking to see whether consciousness, sorry, was aligned with the physical cellular structure of the human body. Once they see that you are in a place where you're in harmony with yourself, and it doesn't mean you're mentally in harmony, but you're consciously in harmony with your physical body, they then leave you alone until you're an adult.
hmm
And then
hmm
that's why when you're younger, you get a lot more contact.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to, I mean, we're getting pretty close to the end here, but we'll have to maybe next time talk about hybrids, because we're bringing that up, and
Yeah.
that's a very, tricky and complicated subject, um, that's a really, really important thing for people to start to understand the whole, hybrid process and what that's doing.
There's only one more screen memory to go, and then we
Okay.
can.
Sorry. Yeah.
So we've got a type F screen memory, and these are called projections, and a lot of people will understand this. Many experienced report seeing owls, deer, clowns, or other widely accepted imagery of a non-threatening nature. These projections are used by ET to obfuscate their true appearance and to limit any negative impact of their contact on the contactee. And so basically, these projections could be seen out of context, and it could be that you see a bunny rabbit that's 6 or 7 feet high, or an owl that's 6 or 7 feet high, or something. So, as long as finish up, as long as people understand that there's a range of screen memories, and it's not just screen memories as one thing, you can start to think about, well, okay, well, my contact is this. Now, I'm not in any way trying to take away from people's experiences of holding a baby, or doing this or doing that, because those things do take place. I've had it happen myself, so Cyan and other people as well. But there will be times when the alien box phenomenon will be in play, and you'll just be part of a construct. You could actually call this a consensus reality, where a group of people get together, create consciously a consensus reality. Other people join it. They would have done that in the focus stuff in Monroe. And then
hmm
people keep seeing the same thing all the time. All that's happened is that you've moved into um, a pre-recreated process.
hmm Well, and also there's the phenomenon of races impersonating other races too. So I mean,
Yeah,
it can get really it gets really complicated really quickly because if you have just like a one-off encounter, you can't be sure really what you encountered because the
yeah.
races are really good at doing that.
This is a really big area because at now, because of the disclosure stuff I'm seeing online on Reddit and all the other places, a lot of people going, "Oh, we all need to start channeling. We all need to start doing C5. We need to do this." And thankfully, there are other people out there going, "Well, hang on, but you need to be careful how you do this." One person said that they picked up a hitchhiker, you know, energetically trying to do
hmm
C5 and couldn't get rid of it, right?
hmm
And so we do need to be careful, because when someone comes to you and says that there's somebody from the Palladians, you don't know whether they are or they aren't.
hmm hmm
And although a lot of people believe that if they use their projection method and only believe that the best and highest good will happen to them, that's a fairly uneducated response to some of the beings that are out there that actually don't care about your highest good. Okay.
hmm
There's a couple of them, but generally most races are good. I was asked the other day, what's my opinion about good or bad aliens compared to what other people are saying, and I said, look, I've not been harmed, and I've worked with thousands of people that haven't been harmed either. So on just that statistical fact, I would say to myself, yeah, there are beings that aren't so great, like the reptilians or something, and then there are beings that are pretty good as well. And you just got to work out who's who.
Awesome. Well, maybe we wrap it up here, and next week maybe we tackle hybrids.
All right.
Because that's going to be, especially now with disclosure, starting. That's going to be a really big topic.
So is that the one where you're talking about the hybrid breeding program that the humans have?
Yeah, and then what's really going on, like what the hybrid process that the Zeta have explained to us, and that's going to be something that a lot of people have to come to grips with because as disclosure moves on, a lot of people are going to have surprises.
I'm Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it, but I can't speak to what humans do. I can only speak about what the Zetas and other races do. Um,
Yeah, no, I mean more like it'd just be good to get into the hybrid constructs and what that is, and for
yeah,
people to understand that. And so also so they understand that there's a lot of races that are here and they're supporting us. They're being
yeah.
they're being helpful and they're providing guidance. And so
I
and like
don't
you
know
said,
about
there
you.
are bad things out there, but mostly it's overall it's mostly positive, and we should as
I
everyone
agree.
knows, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have easily done it billions of like we'd be goners, right? So there's something else going on.
Look, just one thing about this whole hybrid breeding program. Supposedly, these beings are created so that they can be used in fake abduction attempts. Seriously, do the math on this. How many of those beings would you have to create? How many craft would you have to create to actually try and do a global abduction process? It doesn't make any sense what people are saying.
No, and especially when you think about the screen memories, I mean, it's like, why do that? Just give the person a screen memory. I mean, if it's another, like, or who's doing? I mean, so it's like it's the most complicated way of doing. No, but the real, hybrid, the consciousness hybrids, which is a really interesting topic. That's probably something that we should explain a
Yeah,
little bit
we'll definitely
because
get
it's going
into
to
it.
be very
Look,
relevant for as disclosure moves forward. And that's what I mean. A lot of people are going to have surprises because there's very interesting things happening and it's very positive. I mean, that's why I'm very optimistic about where we're heading. It's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be a walk in the park, but that's like we're finally coming out, into a better space, I think.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, yeah, it was good fun.
Cool.
Fun
Yeah,
today. All right.
we'll wrap it up and thanks everyone. I'll put the link to the Zeta connection in the description down below. If you have any questions, please let us know and we'll see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, I just was going to say before you hit that button, uh, some of the books have gone back up on Amazon, and basically the primer, the Zeta interviews 2, and this one, the Inside the Hive Mind,
Hmm.
they've all gone back up. Um, they're not very expensive, and a lot of times we only just put them up there for the printing cost as well. Okay, so just so that people know. Anyway,
And they're highly recommended. If you haven't read them, you absolutely should. So
I'll see you next week.
cool. See you guys.
Bye.